Hello there. Um, Good evening. Hey, it's time for number 17. Are you ready? This is a good chapter. I like this chapter. We got a lot of stuff going on in this chapter, so let's get moving. Really a quick review there. Remember in 1 Nephi chapters 11 through 15, Nephi he had his vision of the tree of life. Lots of stuff went on there, and then it all ended up there in chapter 15 with his brothers saying, "I don't get it. What does this mean? What does that mean? I don't get it." And Nephi is asking him, have you inquired of the Lord? Why are you asking me? I feel kind of like, nowadays when the kids ask a question, I say, have you Googled it? Why don't you Google it? Only in this case, this is way better. So it's a poor example, but it's actually an extremely similar example, just in a very not spiritual sort of way. So have you inquired of the Lord? Okay, so that's 11 through 15. So now let's carry on. So here we go. And now it came to pass that after I, Nephi, had made an end of speaking to my brethren, behold, they said unto me, Thou hast declared unto us hard things, more than we are able to bear. And it came to pass that I said unto them, that I knew that I had spoken hard things against the wicked, according to the truth, and the righteous have I justified, and testified that they should be lifted up at the last day. Wherefore, the guilty take the truth to be hard, for it cutteth them to the very center. So if you'll recall, just before this, it was the section where he was basically talking about, there's a place prepared for the righteous, and the wicked are cast out. Sorry, guys. So it was a very, you're either in or you're out kind of a discussion. And so they're kind of like, whoa, hey, I don't think we're on the right team here. Anyways, and so, thou hast declared unto us hard things. And you can put any sort of a tone of voice behind that. But it's an extremely common thing, right? Laman and Lemuel were living the same lives as so many do today. And it's a hard thing, right? The righteousness that was being described and that was required to live in the presence of God, it's hard for someone who would rather just not deal with real issues, right? Anyways, more on that later. Verse 3, And now, my brethren, if you were righteous and were willing to hearken to the truth and give heed unto it, that ye might walk uprightly before God, then ye would not murmur because of the truth and say, Thou speakest hard things against us. And it came to pass that I, Nephi, did exhort my brethren with all diligence to keep the commandments of the Lord. And it came to pass that they did humble themselves before the Lord, insomuch that I had joy and great hopes of them, that they would walk in the paths of righteousness. So that's great, right? And, we talked about this in the last video, that Nephi's not given up on his brothers. And there's more to come, and he still is not going to give up on his brothers. And they're going to do more dumb things, and they're going to come back around again. And, it's easy to point the finger and criticize Laman and Lemuel, but I think that's a lot, we're a lot like that, right? We kind of have our ups and downs, and life gets tough, right? And Laman and Lemuel had to deal with some pretty tough things. I'm not trying to completely defend them, but I think that there's lessons for all of us to learn from them, right? Now, all these things were said and done as my father dwelt in a tent in the valley which he called Lemuel. And it came to pass that I, Nephi, took one of the daughters of Ishmael to wife, and also my brethren took of the daughters of Ishmael to wife, and also Zoram took of the eldest daughter of Ishmael to wife. And thus my father had fulfilled all the commandments of the Lord which had been given unto him, and also I, Nephi, had been blessed of the Lord exceedingly. So, life goes on, right? Yeah, it does. Life goes on. And by the way, I hope you'll enjoy these pictures here. These are all, at least most of the pictures coming up. I've borrowed these. Sorry, I just got a little distracted because in just a minute, all the titles are going to become the same. I knew I was forgetting something. And you know what? At this late date, I'm not going to change the title. So this is one of the last ones that makes actual sense. Sorry, folks. That's okay. It's not about the titles, right? These pictures come from the Book of Mormon movies that the church has recently put out. And they are wonderful. If you haven't watched them yet, go watch them. They do a much better job of telling the story than I do. Oi. Okay, so isn't that cool, though, that, with all the grief and everything, Nephi still says that he had been blessed of the Lord exceedingly. So, very cool. They're a family, and they know that it's going to take them a long time to get through this, and they don't put off life. They don't postpone life and families, even though they're going through some really crazy stuff, right? And our church leaders have counseled us in that same way for decades. Don't put off having children because of, whatever your preferred excuse is. I mean, even if it's a real serious thing. If it's time, it's time. Okay, things are starting to get interesting. And it came to pass that the voice of the Lord spake unto my father by night, and commanded him that on the morrow he should take his journey into the wilderness. Which is interesting if you think about it, because they had been camped there in the valley of Lemuel for quite some time. We don't know exactly how long, but if you figure that Lehi and Sariah were there the entire time, that basically they hoofed it out to there and then stayed. So they've been there for quite some time. And so, he's being told on the evening that in the morning, time to go. And so you figure it's just not a lot of warning. It's interesting. I'm curious because I assume that their tents that they have, these are essentially Bedouin tents, right? I'm guessing that those tents take way longer than what we're used to when we think of tents, some pop-up Coleman spring bar or whatever thing that goes up and down and zips into a little nylon sack. Anyway, so, okay, okie dokie. Where are we going to go, though? Lord, where are we going to go? So verse 10, and it came to pass that as my father arose in the morning, he went forth to the tent door. To his great astonishment, he beheld upon the ground a round ball of curious workmanship, and it was of fine brass. And within the ball were 2 spindles, and the one pointed the way whither we should go into the wilderness. I love how he leaves us hanging here. There's a couple of different references to the spindles or the pointers. It's like, great. What did the other one point to? I don't know. So I guess we're just not really going to find out right now. It's interesting. There's been discussion back and forth about, well, where did this come from and who made it and what does it really look like? And we don't know other than they tell us ball and spindle and that there's writing inside. And it's brass and it's curious. So, well, okay. I kind of like this version. I've not seen this one or this type of imagined design before these videos came out. And it's kind of cool. The whole, split it in half, like a cantaloupe or whatever. And there you got your 2 halves. There's been a very common, kind of a ball with a pointy thing and you can sort of see in through holes. And that's a different way of looking at it. But the reality is none of us know. So however we wanted to look, that's fine. But it was, it has been interesting. It's been pondered and, for us all to ponder, where did it come from? And we don't really have any record of the Lord actually fashioning any sort of a thing, a device or whatever. Even if you think about Moses and the 10 Commandments, Moses carved he created the tablets and the Lord wrote on it with his finger. And so we've seen that sort of thing before. But otherwise, even the brother of Jared, who we'll learn about, in a long time from now, he took the 16 clear stones and and he created those, and then the Lord touched them with his finger to turn them, to light them. And so the pattern seems to be that the Lord doesn't personally make things, and so it's just an interesting question. I wonder who made these, who made the Liahona. It doesn't look like an Apple product, so that's not one of those. Anyways, okay, so let's keep going. And it came to pass that we did gather together whatsoever things we should carry into the wilderness, and all the remainder of our provisions which the Lord had given unto us. Isn't that interesting? Which they say are provisions which the Lord had given unto us. So the Lord is front and center, in terms of where their blessings come from, and I love that. I love that. Like, is that how we look at it? Do we say, look at all the things, don't forget to get the stuff that the Lord gave us? It's, hey, I earned this with my money. So interesting. And we did take seed of every kind that we might carry into the wilderness. And it came to pass that we did take our tents and depart into the wilderness across the river Laman. And it came to pass that we traveled for the space of 4 days, nearly a south-southeast direction, and we did pitch our tents again, and we did call the name of the place Shazer. So here on the map, you see there's Jerusalem way up here, borders of the Red Sea, Valley of Lemuel. So they've been camped there for a while, and then whoop, they get this far. And Shazer. Now you see, though, they have got a long ways to go before they're at their jumping off point. So, more to come. Although Nephi is going to start to skip ahead pretty quick in the next chapter. And it came to pass that we did take our bows and our arrows and go forth into the wilderness to slay food for our families. And after we had slain food for our families, we did return again to our families in the wilderness to the place of Shazer, and we did go forth again in the wilderness, following the same direction, keeping in the most fertile parts of the wilderness, which were in the borders near the Red Sea. And it came to pass that we did travel for the space of many days, slaying food by the way with our bows and our arrows, and our stones and our slings. And we did follow the direction of the ball, which led us in the more fertile parts of the wilderness. So here, it was forever. I grew up thinking wilderness, yeah, okay, like the forest, like what I'm used to here in North America. Wrong. This is the Arabian Peninsula, right? So wilderness is either what you're seeing there or just dusty, dry dustiness. Also, we assume that they traveled at night because, again, Arabian Peninsula, right? This is just a zillion degrees in the daytime, and that's how they travel then. The Bedouins and all of those, they would travel at night. There was no air conditioning. There were none of those things, and so that's simply how you would camp during the day, get under, either find some shade or create some shade, and rest during the day. So very interesting. And we're going to see some references in here that actually hint at that, and it makes complete sense if you consider the culture. So it's kind of cool. Okay. Dun, dun, dun. And after we had traveled for the space of many days, we did pitch our tents for the space of a time, that we might again rest ourselves and obtain food for our families. So I guess, they catch what they can along the way, but then at some point they've kind of run through, and so they need to just stop and, make a camp and go take care of life for a bit, rest up a bit. And it came to pass that I, Nephi, went forth to slay food. Behold, as I, Nephi, went forth to slay food, behold, I did break my bow, which was made of fine steel. And after I did break my bow, behold, my brethren were angry with me because of the loss of my bow, for we did obtain no food. So interesting things going on here. Now, for years and years and years, people have said, what? Steel? There was no steel in this area at this time. They hadn't developed steel yet here. Well, fooled everybody. They have recently uncovered, and I apologize, I don't have a picture of it. I've seen a picture of it. I couldn't find a picture of it. But they've uncovered, the archaeologists have uncovered in that same region a steel bow. And it dates to just a little bit before this period here. So there it is. Steel bows, they're a thing. Anyways, it's interesting that if you read this closely, they're saying, my brethren were angry with me because of the loss of my bow. And he starts it out by saying, I, Nephi, went forth. So it's like, wait, where's all your helpers? Because earlier on, they were talking about the brothers slaying food and everything, but it seems like somehow it's fallen to Nephi to do this by himself. Let's find out why. And it came to pass that we did return without food to our families, and being much fatigued because of their journeying, they did suffer much for the want of food. And it came to pass that Laman and Lemuel and the sons of Ishmael did begin to murmur exceedingly because of their sufferings and afflictions in the wilderness. And also my father began to murmur against the Lord his God. Yea, and they were all exceedingly sorrowful, even that they did murmur against the Lord. So that's a thing, right? I mean, nobody's surprised by the fact that Laman and Lemuel and the sons of Ishmael began to murmur. That is what they do. They murmur at everything. But you got to figure that this was no small thing if even Lehi is murmuring. And he's not just saying, I'm really hungry, man. He's murmuring against the Lord. So we don't know exactly what he said. But I'm sure it was, along the lines of, God has abandoned us. He doesn't care about me. He's leaving us here to die. That sort of talk. And, I say it kind of, I'm not trying to be sarcastic, but I'm also not being incredibly lifelike, or realistic. But, if we think about that, we all go through trials. Everybody goes through trials. And we get to choose how we want to respond to those trials, right? And it really matters because it's, how we look at it. We can gain from it or we can just become poisoned. And, there's people all around us. If you think about it, you probably know people who have had very serious trials, like soul-crushing trials, and who have risen from it and have become better through it, more refined and humbled and just better. And then, you've known other people who have gone in the opposite direction and they just get angry about it. And, as it says in the scriptures, they curse God and want to die. So it is interesting here. I'll apologize up front, but the thought that keeps coming to my mind is they were hangry. I'm sure that doesn't even begin to describe it. But anyways, things were getting rough. And it came to pass that I, Nephi, having been afflicted with my brethren because of the loss of my bow, and their bows having lost their springs, it began to be exceedingly difficult, yea, insomuch that we could obtain no food. And it came to pass that I, Nephi, did speak much unto my brethren, because they had hardened their hearts again, even unto complaining against the Lord their God. Right? Nephi's hungry too. They're all hungry together there. But Nephi is trying to keep them all cheered up as best he can. Right? Not an easy thing. Anyway, so in verse 21, okay, that's why Nephi seems to be kind of on his own with this, because Laman and Lemuel's bows, which presumably are not made of fine steel, it doesn't say it, they've lost their springs. So, okay, that's interesting. I do wonder, we had an amazing scoutmaster, my son did growing up, and he was an archer. Still is, turns out, and he's made his own bows. But one of the things that we learned from him is that there's a proper way to care for your bow so that it stays in good shape. And including, you unstring it when you're not using it so that it doesn't lose its spring. And I do wonder, with this story, were Laman and Lemuel taking care of their bows? Just a curious question, because otherwise, I'm sure they were decent bows. Why would that happen? We won't know. Another one for the ponder list, right? Do you love these pictures? I love this picture. And this is the part of the video where Nephi's solving the problem. And it came to pass that I, Nephi, did make out of wood a bow, and out of a straight stick an arrow. Wherefore I did arm myself with a bow and an arrow, with a sling and with stones. And I said unto my father, whither shall I go to obtain food? And it came to pass that he did inquire of the Lord, for they had humbled themselves because of my words. For I did say many things unto them in the energy of my soul. Now, there's a couple things I want to comment on these two verses here. The first thing is, go Nephi, right? Nephi. I gotta wonder, was he just kind of sitting there thinking, and he probably was. I mean, it's probably a mixture. Was he just kind of using his brain and kind of going, I'm really hungry, my bow's broken, and I know there's food out there somewhere, and I gotta solve this problem. Think, kind of like Winnie the Pooh. Think. Oh, hey, I know what I'll do. I think I'm going to make a bow. Or do you suppose that maybe, even though it doesn't mention it anywhere in here, that Nephi was saying, I'm really hungry, and I know there's food out there. We just need a way to slay it. Heavenly Father, can you help me out here? I'm not sure really what's going to be the best way to do this. And so I can't believe that Nephi did not spend a decent amount of time on his knees over this one before he even got to this point. And it was probably the Lord whispering to him, to saying, you can make a bow, you can make one, and maybe even here's how. Who knows? But so that's the first thing. It's just how Nephi is always action oriented. There's a problem, and he just kind of goes to work, and I love that. It's also interesting to see. Notice how the Lord solved one problem of whither shall we go with an amazing, mind-blowing miracle. Boom! Here's this little brass ball of insane, curious workmanship that does magical things. On your doorstep. In the morning, just poof, there it is. And now here's another thing, and he's not solving the problem for Nephi. He's if there was inspiration, it was, I guess you better make a bow. And out of a straight stick, an arrow. So I hope that was a really straight stick. We've got a bunch of scrub oak in our yard, and there will be no bows or arrows made out of any of that stuff. So now, the next cool thing, and I'm sorry I'm taking a minute on this slide, but it's cool. What does he do? He goes to his father. Whither shall I go to obtain food? Now, why is that so cool? Well, Lehi was struggling too, wasn't he? He was struggling. He was having a bit of a faith crisis, right? He was murmuring against his father, against the Lord, right? And so that's a problem. And so here's Nephi thinking, sheesh, my dad's, he's on the rocks here. He's having a bit of a faith crisis. And many layers. He is my father, and I respect him. He is the leader of our group, and I respect that. He's kind of in trouble, spiritually speaking, and I want to help him. And so even though Nephi has spent hours, presumably with the Lord and his angels, and has a completely direct, open line of communication to the Lord, he, instead of just going himself and, figuring it out, he asks his father to go ask the Lord where to go to obtain food, right? So that is awesome, and it's wonderful, and it's a great example for all of us to respect our parents and our leaders, to be humble and supportive, right? Verse 24, and it came to pass that he did inquire of the Lord, for they had humbled themselves because of my words. For I did say, we already said this, didn't we? For I did say many things unto them in the energy of my soul. Thank heavens for the energy of his soul. He never gave up. And it came to pass that the voice of the Lord came unto my father, and he was truly chastened because of his murmuring against the Lord, insomuch that he was brought down into the depths of sorrow, right? Poor Lehi, that must have been a really uncomfortable conversation between him and the Lord. And it came to pass that the voice of the Lord said unto me, look upon the ball, and behold the things which are written. Before I move on, I just want to comment on that. We all do things in our lives that we knew we shouldn't have done, right? Or at least we figure out afterwards, I really shouldn't have done that. And, that are embarrassing and We don't really want to talk to Heavenly Father about it because it's embarrassing. We don't want to talk to him about it, right? We'd rather talk to him like, can we change the subject, please? And everything is telling us not to. He doesn't want to hear from us. We're not worthy to talk to him right now. That is such a common thing for us to think. I'm not worthy to talk to Heavenly Father. He's Heavenly Father, and I am a mess. I'm a wreck. And that is not the truth speaking. That is the adversary whispering in our ears, trying to get us out of talking to Father. We need to talk to Heavenly Father, and the more embarrassed or awkward or regretful that we feel, the more we need to talk to him, because peace and joy and forgiveness it's not going to come by ignoring him, right? We gotta just talk to him and listen to what he has to say. Okay, so the voice said, "Behold the things which are written." So let's do that. So here's a close-up of the latest guess at what it looked like. So who knows? And it came to pass that when my father beheld the things which were written upon the ball, he did fear and tremble exceedingly, and also my brethren and the sons of Ishmael and our wives. What do you suppose it could have said on there that they would fear and tremble exceedingly? All of them. You can only wonder. And it came to pass that I, Nephi, beheld the pointers which were in the ball, that they did work according to the faith and diligence and heed which we did give unto them. And there was also written upon them a new writing which was plain to be read, which did give us understanding concerning the ways of the Lord. And it was written and changed from time to time according to the faith and diligence which we gave unto it. And thus we see that by small means the Lord can bring about great things. Now in this case, what he's calling small means, we live in an age of technology today where we know some very miraculous little things come in teeny little packages, and they usually cost $1,000 or more. And so, I think we can appreciate the fact that, yes, it comes in a small package. By small means, it's not an army. And I think that's kind of the way he's looking at it, is it doesn't always take an army to make big things happen. Sometimes it can happen by tiny little things. So, sure enough. And it came to pass that I, Nephi, did go forth up into the top of the mountain, according to the directions which were given upon the ball. Now, I thought about this. Who knows? We don't know how long they've been without food, but we got to figure Nephi is weak, right? And so I wonder if he was just like, when either the writings or the spindle on the ball said, "Oh yeah, go to the top of the mountain, the very top of the mountain," because that's just exhausting, and I'm sure he was very weak. Anyways, that's okay. And it came to pass that I did slay wild beasts, insomuch that I did obtain food for our families. And it came to pass that I did return to our tents, bearing the beasts which I had slain. And now, when they beheld that I had obtained food, how great was their joy! And it came to pass that they did humble themselves before the Lord, and did give thanks unto him. By the way, in case you were curious, again, we don't know, but one of the things that we are that is guessed, you'll recall that he said that he had to make an arrow out of a straight stick. And people have asked, well, wait, his bow was broken, but he didn't lose all of his arrows, right? And the hypothesis there is that his steel bow and that Laman and Lemuel's bows were probably of a design that made them require shorter arrows, and that given the design, the limitations of the materials that Nephi had, he probably required a much longer arrow to work properly in the bow that he made. So, so that's just a guess as to why it is that he had to make an arrow as well as a bow. And it is interesting because he says one arrow. It's like, okay, arrow. Anybody who's ever shot, done archery, you lose a lot of arrows unless you're really good. So hopefully he's really good. And it came to pass that we did again take our journey, traveling nearly the same course as in the beginning. And after we had traveled for the space of many days, we did pitch our tents again, that we might tarry for the space of a time, right? So you go for a while and then you stop. And verse 34 also gives us some indication as to why they probably stopped. And it came to pass that Ishmael died and was buried in the place which is called Nahom. So, you figure that's probably why they stopped when they did, is because they could tell that Ishmael he wasn't doing well and they needed to stop. So, interesting thing, on the little map, it might be too small to see, but there's Nahom down there. They've actually found it, right? There's so many of these places. Really, the only place that is ever named in this whole journey that we absolutely know where it is Jerusalem. And then the rest of it is just described, right? Or he's given it his own names, the Valley of Lemuel and Shazer and things like that. But Nahom, the way they describe it, it's a place. They didn't name it Nahom. It was called Nahom, and in recent years, the archaeologists have come across this is an altar, and it's kind of hard to see, but right there, plain as day, that's the word Nahom. If you know how to speak, stick figures or whatever exactly that is. I don't think it's Aramaic, but it's some ancient language. And they found that inscription that reads Nahom in several other places right in that same area there. So that gives them reason to believe with great confidence that is the city of Nahom. So there you go. Anyways, so that's archaeology, but Ishmael's dead, right? This is the patriarch of the other family, and so that is no small thing. And in fact, they're at a fairly somewhat inhabited place, presumably, and so it's an interesting. They're kind of at a crossroads, aren't they? And it came to pass that the daughters of Ishmael did mourn exceedingly because of the loss of their father, and because of their afflictions in the wilderness. And they did murmur against my father, because he had brought them out of the land of Jerusalem, saying, Our father is dead, yea, and we have wandered much in the wilderness, and we have suffered much affliction, hunger, thirst, and fatigue. And after all these sufferings, we must perish in the wilderness with hunger. They've estimated that, not estimated, Nephi tells us that they traveled for 8 years, kind of in the midst of this travel, and we think that that's not the entire length of time. But you figure, wandering and living like that for that amount of time, I think it would be pretty easy to say there is no end in sight. Like, how does this end? Where are we headed? Are we all just going to kind of drop like flies one at a time? So, what an interesting thing. It's also interesting to think that they did not bring their gold and their riches with them, right? They didn't bring their American Express card, and yet they've been able to survive for 8 years in the deserts of Arabia. So the Lord is clearly taking care of them as they go. But anyways, it's a very difficult time for them. And thus they did murmur against my father, and also against me, and they were desirous to return again to Jerusalem. And isn't that interesting? How many times do you suppose Nephi just wanted to scream at him, Fine, go to Jerusalem, make my life easier, please. Why are you yelling at me? Just go, 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 go. He probably, was so wished to do that, except remember, this is Nephi, and he's seen it all. So he has seen what happens with his nation, his people, the Nephites, and how, thank heavens for the Lamanites. Thank heavens for the Lamanites, who were always there when needed to stir the Nephites back to the remembrance of their God and their covenants through trials and tribulations and warfare and all those things. And ultimately came out the more righteous of the group. Right? So thank heavens, Nephi did not scream at Laman and Lemuel saying, Fine, go to Jerusalem, see what I care. Anyways, this is interesting. So this is what they're saying. And Laman said unto Lemuel, and also unto the sons of Ishmael, Behold, let us slay our father, and also our brother Nephi, who has taken it upon him to be our ruler and our teacher, who are his elder brethren. So you can see he's kind of making a case here, right? Now he says that the Lord has talked with him, and also that angels have ministered unto him. But behold, we know that he lies unto us, and he tells us these things, and he worketh many things by his cunning arts, that he may deceive our eyes. thinking perhaps that he may lead us away into some strange wilderness. And after he has led us away, he has thought to make himself a king and a ruler over us, that he may do with us according to his will and pleasure. And after this manner did my brother Laman stir up their hearts to anger. Thank you, Laman. And holy cow, dear Laman, by any chance, do you remember a few years back, okay, maybe a bunch of years back, being in the cavity of a rock out there when you were trying to get the plates of brass from Laban, and you were angry then too, and you were beating your brothers with sticks, with rods, and who appeared and stopped you? An angel. So isn't it amazing that Laman and Lemuel both have seen an angel, they've heard the voice of the Lord, and yet still here he is denying everything, blatantly denying everything, and calling Nephi a liar. So it is amazing what people will say when they are under the wrong influence, right? But happy middle endings. And it came to pass that the Lord was with us. Yea, even the voice of the Lord came and did speak many words unto them, and did chasten them exceedingly. And after they were chastened by the voice of the Lord, they did turn away their anger, and did repent of their sins, insomuch that the Lord did bless us again with food, that we did not perish. See? Happy endings again, for now. And isn't this just how life is, right? We all mess up. We all get hangry. We all, deceive ourselves, and we blind ourselves, right? We turn our backs on the truth sometimes in little ways, sometimes in big ways. But if we will listen to the Lord and turn back to him, he will forgive us, and we can overcome. We can get back to a better place, and hopefully we can do a good enough job. And if we keep doing it, then maybe it'll start to stick. So going all the way back to the beginning of this chapter, remember they said, behold, it is a hard thing. These words of the Lord, talking about the wicked being cast out. This is hard to bear. And so question for us as we go, is the truth hard for us to bear? Do we shy away from the truth? Are there things that we're kind of ignoring? Do we prefer the pleasant word of falsehood? It's kind of funny. I keep thinking about, like there's a trail system close to us here, and I love to go ride my bike in these trails, my mountain bike. And so I know the map of that trail system like the back of my hand. And so how smart would it be if, I traveled to some distant other, mountain or canyon to go ride my bike, but I brought with me the map to the one that's near me here because I love that map, and I'm really familiar with it. And so it's okay. I'm going to use the map that I like, even though I'm in somewhere completely different. Well, maybe that's a sketchy analogy, but that's kind of what it's like when we are deliberately not seeking the answers, or Heavenly Father's truth, right? If we're just kind of, if we know, it's like I know I need to do better, or whatever it may be. In some cases we try to solve our problems with pills or different things like that when there's underlying issues, and who knows? There's an infinite number of ways that we kind of deceive ourselves, and we want the quick fixes. We don't want to do the hard work to really solve problems and get ourselves straightened out. And that's what Laman and Lemuel were doing. Is they knew in their hearts that what they were doing wasn't the right way, and yet they didn't want to go through that hard process. They wanted the easy, quick answer, and it's tempting. We all feel that way, but the shortest path to the blessings and joy is to embrace the Lord's truth and go seek it, and when we get it, apply it as completely as we can. And it'll be hard, right? The direct path is not an easy path, and yet it is easier, and it will get you there than the winding path, which you might never get there at all. And if you do, it will certainly take longer to get there. Anyways, so there we go. That was chapter 16. So coming up next is chapter 17. And this is another exciting one. Nephi gets to build a ship. And who knew? But his brothers are not going to be supportive. How about that? Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed this. And now you go read it yourself. Remember, you're going to get different things out of it than I did. And you need to talk to the Lord about a lot of things, just like me. We all need to do better at that. So have fun, and I will see you later.